everybody, I'm back. Ooh, it's hot. I have to turn this fan off so you guys can hear. Anyway, so I'm back here to talk about a topic that I'm excited to talk about, not because I'm excited that I have to talk about it because it's me, but because I think it might help someone, because in this discussion you may actually see yourself and you might say, oh yeah, that I did the same thing, or the same thing is happening to me, and it might give you encouragement so you don't feel alone, you don't feel isolated, you don't feel like a dumb dummy, because I've had all of those feelings going through this process. But anyway, not to belabor the point, the kind of crux of the video is these are some of the habits I let creep in, or habits I let slip away, that got me right back into debt. And so for those of you familiar with my story, I kind of rose to internet fame. And when I say that, I definitely say in quotes, because who is famous as a personal finance blogger or writer? But my story was circulated around the internet by small bloggers, podcasters, and major news outlets alike about my story of paying off over $120,000 worth of debt. And kind of like the subtext of that story was that we, at the time I was married, moved to the hood to make it happen, and we paid off debt. So it's a pretty cute, unique story that people like to tell. And a few months ago, I came back to the internet. I had like a 4 or 5 year hiatus because, as I mentioned as well, I went through divorce, had some other personal challenges, and I just haven't been active online. So I came back telling everyone that womp, back in debt. Now, the good news is that the debt is mostly the purchase of a primary residence. And the bad news is that there's some credit card debt. I did get a car. So I did a lot of things that I said I would never do. But, what's done is done. I would like to sit here and tell you all the things that happened to me, because there were some crazy things that happened. And if I went through point by point and event by event, you would say, oh, I totally understand why you're in this position. But I really don't want to highlight those things, not now, maybe for another time, because I don't want to make excuses. If someone, of course, if they go through divorce, if they get sick, if they go, if they're disabled, those are all great excuses to, go into kind of like a financial slump. Those would be good excuses. However, I try to live my life that in such a way that I don't want to give a lot of place to excuses, if that makes sense. So yes, these bad things happen, these unfortunate events happen, but what do we know about life? Life is always going to be happening. And it reminds me of that parable that Jesus talked about, saying, for those who hear his sayings and do them, they're like someone who builds their house on the rock. And when the storms of life come, they are going to be solid, they're going to be good. Versus the person who hears what Jesus has to say and doesn't do them, their foundation is on the sand. So when the storms come, the rain comes, they're pretty much going to be wiped out. So that's what I aim to be, someone who is principled no matter what happens. I don't want to use that as an excuse to say, this is why I'm broke, this is why I went back into debt. So that's what I'm trying to do now, try to go back and troubleshoot where I let go of some of the kind of like personal rules and standards that I had in place for my finances. Even though it was a really rough time, I want to make sure that I keep those standards high, so if something else happens, I won't be in the same pickle. I have the utmost confidence that I'm going to dig out again, because I'm really working very actively and I'm sharing my journey with you, to get out of debt again. But not to belabor the point, because this is a pretty long introduction, I'll just go over a few things that I believe caused me to go back into debt, and if I have time, I'll talk about how I'm reversing them. If not in this video, maybe another one. So the first thing that I stopped doing was a budget. At one point, I had become really an expert budgeter. And a budget is just a spending plan, right? It helps you direct your money in such a way that you can reach your financial goals. So if your goal is early retirement, taking a vacation, buying, an investment property, renovating a home, your budget or your spending plan gives you boundaries to direct your money in a way that helps you reach those goals. That's for those of us who don't like the word budget, because sometimes that word can give people anxiety, but it's not to restrict you, it's actually to give you more freedom. So I stopped budgeting. Why? Because there was a point where I paid off all debt. I had rental properties. I had some side income. Life was actually pretty good. So good that I put everything on auto pay. I put everything on credit cards, and then I would auto pay the credit cards out of the bank account. So everything was just automatic. Life was great. I didn't have to think about anything. I could spend whatever I wanted. I was still saving. I was still building equity in properties. It's a pretty sweet arrangement. I'm really sad that I'm not going to say it ended. We just took a quick pause, had a small detour, and I believe I'll be back there again. But anyway, that's what I stopped doing. I stopped budgeting, and I guess the second part of that was I put everything on credit cards, which is not bad in and of itself, right? So what happened with me was that everything was on credit cards, and the credit cards were getting paid off at the end of every month, so I wasn't paying interest. But then what happened? The merry-go-round ended. So usually I would only put on the credit cards what I knew I could pay off each month. But when I became separated from the person I was married to at that time, COVID had come and court dates were delayed. So I did not have the cash flow that I was used to having. I didn't have access to the rental cash flow to pay off bills. I didn't have access to the cash flow to pay off the credit card, and just, I wasn't working. So all of that compounded, and it took me a long time to get some of the support that was supposed to be due to me, and I didn't come away from the marriage how I thought I would. In another video, I actually explained why I left pretty much everything. So I had to kind of start over, giving up assets, giving up cash flow while retaining a lot of the debt from some of those investments. That it was just pretty much a recipe for disaster. So the first thing I did was stop budgeting. The second thing I did was just put everything on credit cards, put everything on auto pay. And then when I was kind of left holding the bag, I didn't have the income, I didn't have even the organization. I was actually pretty emotionally distraught during this time because I had a very contentious, acrimonious separation and divorce from the person I was married to. So my mind was pretty much fried for almost the last 4 years, just trying to deal with that situation. And at the time also, still having to raise my children, take care of my mom, who was having some health issues. So just kind of like that perfect storm made it so that I just couldn't keep up with things. And again, I don't want to make these excuses. They are good reasons, but there is a point where I personally have to take responsibility and just say, hey, that setup was kind of risky in the first place. So I'm not telling anyone, don't use credit cards ever again. Don't put things on auto pay. Just make sure you have a backup plan should something happen where your cash flow is cut off or you can't make the payments like you thought you would. The other thing I would say that I stopped doing, honestly, was I'll say this is what I started doing. Actually, this is a bad habit I picked up. So I started to become very anxious about my financial future. So what did I do? I would have some savings, some cash, and for a long time I started reaching for credit because I was afraid to use my cash. I was like, I gotta preserve my cash. I never know when I would need it. So I kept running up credit cards, and then there came a point where I wasn't paying them off at the end of every month either. So that was something that I'm still trying to get out of that even now. So it's really from fear, honestly. So I was very fearful because of everything that had happened to me. I was so scared. I'm like, the other shoe's gonna drop. I just had this fear going on, totally let go of this abundance mentality that I used to have regarding my finances. And, it just shows. So there's even what I'm doing now is I'm trying not to be afraid. No, I'm saying this. I am not afraid to use my cash because I believe more is coming. Despite what the circumstances are in the economy, if there's recession, none of that matters. I'm choosing to believe God and that He's going to replenish and restore. And that's a daily battle and a daily struggle. So those are, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 things that I started doing that I regret, and it actually got me back into debt. So just really quickly, what am I doing to counter all those effects? So I talked about my micro, mini, baby steps. The first thing I did was did an audit, and I have cut off a bunch of stuff that was on auto pay, things I didn't need, all these subscriptions. So I'm probably about 90% done that process. I have a few more things to get through my business finances and fix. So that's number one. The next thing, I actually did a budget. And so I'll probably talk about that in another video, because I did the budget for October and I'm like, yay, I did a budget. But then I don't even know. I'm like, did I stick to it? I don't know. And again, this was something I was really, really good at. I was basically a budgeting genius in my former life. And I just got totally confused once I did this budget. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So I figured that out was I had to take everything off of auto pay. Not only did I get rid of some subscriptions, but now I'm turning everything off of auto pay. And then what I'll do, and this is what I did again in a former life, is, you know, say I have a paycheck or some money come in every 2 weeks or every month. When that money comes in, look at everything that's due within that 2 weeks or that month or whatever the pay frequency is, and pay that off, and whatever's left over will go into the buckets of grocery, gas, eating out, and those will just be done in cash. I'll pull the cash out, put those in my envelopes, and that's how I'm going to make sure that I stick to my budget. So I'll probably do a more in-depth video for that. And some of you who are watching this, you might be like, duh, who doesn't know how to do that? You guys, it's been so long since I had done this, because I thought I'd graduated. I was living the high life. I had money coming in. I really didn't have to worry about this. And it's kind of like when you lose weight and you kind of figure it out. You don't have to track your calories and everything. You know, you kind of get on cruise control, and then one day you get on the scale. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to basics. So that's where I am. I'm going back to basics. I'm excited to take this journey with you, because the last time I got out of debt, I kind of came on the scene like, hey, I'm debt free. And now I want to take you through what I'm doing step by step. Again, this is really just so I can help someone who might be in the same boat. You might want to get out of debt, but you don't know what to do. You don't know where to start. I am here in the trenches with you. I'm in this struggle with you, and I'm hoping to have more educational, informational resources and a great testimony to inspire you sooner than you think. So thanks for watching, you all, and I'll see you in the next video.